could drown a whale. Okay, they can drown. All right, so our first class that we're going to be looking at is class Reptilia, which are reptiles. Those are going to be like turtles, and sea snakes, okay, the marine iguana, okay, all sorts of different kinds of things. General information about this class: they have scales, okay, and those scales will help to decrease water loss. So just like snakes and stuff that live in the desert, okay, they have those scales help to hold water into their body. The same thing with reptiles that live in the ocean. They have scales that will hold water in their body because they have less salt in their body than outside, so they tend to lose water, so those scales help to prevent water loss. They're also oviparous, okay, which means they lay eggs. All right, so all types of reptiles except for sea snakes have to come up onto land to reproduce and lay their eggs. So that's why sea turtles have to crawl back up onto land to lay their eggs, and then you have the little hatchlings that run back to the ocean. Okay, so they all have to come back onto land to lay eggs, except for sea snakes. Sea snakes are viviparous, which means that they give live birth, right? So they don't have to come back onto land in order to reproduce. So they can stay in the water all the time. They have special eggs. They're called amniotic eggs. So what that means is it's basically like a hard outer covering with a bunch of membranes inside and like a yolk that helps to support and nourish the baby, okay, that's in there. So they do have an amniotic egg. And then those eggs, when they're first laid, the shell of that egg is very leathery, so it's like soft. And then after it's laid, after a couple days, it'll harden and become more like that hard outer covering of like a chicken egg that you think of, okay? So it's leathery at first, and then it becomes hardened. They're also ectothermic, which means that their body temperature is dependent on the surrounding water temperature. So they cannot maintain their own body temperature. So like Squeegee back here in the back, he's a reptile, right? He lives in the water. That light, it's Squeegee, yes. That light, okay, is a heating lamp. Okay, so he actually he doesn't do it in class because he's scared of you for good reason. And so he sits up on the rock, and you'll see him, he spreads his arms and his little back legs out, and he actually will be soaking up the heat from the heating lamp. So he has to have that heating lamp, or he can't maintain his own body temperature, can't get warm, and he would die. So he does have to have that heating lamp. So because of this, like sea turtles and stuff, they can't maintain their own body temperature. So they have to live in a place where the water is warm enough for them, right? Which means you typically find marine reptiles in the tropics, right? Where the water's warmer and they can survive. That's why you don't find like turtles in Antarctica, okay? Because it's too cold. All right, and then here's a picture to help you see. They all breathe air, so they all come up to the surface to breathe. All right. Okay, so our first type of marine reptile is the marine iguana. These things are cool. These are the only marine lizard, the only ones that you'll find, only lizards that you'll find that spend any part of their life in the ocean. And they're only found in the Galapagos. So the Galapagos Islands are off the coast of Ecuador. So here's South America, okay, and then that little red dot right there, those are where the Galapagos Islands are. And then there's a close-up of them. So they're only found in the Galapagos. And they're called the marine iguana because they eat algae and stuff that's in the water. Okay, so they do spend a lot of their life up on land, but one of their main food sources is the algae that's in the water. So they actually will dive into the water, swim out, go down, and eat algae, and then swim back to shore. Okay, so they're going to eat algae in the water. So they're actually more buoyant than like fish. So they actually kind of tend to float a little bit in water. And so in order to prevent them from having to use a lot of energy to be perpetually swimming down towards the bottom as they're trying to eat, they actually eat rocks. So they'll eat rocks, like a couple rocks, and swallow them and keep them in their stomach, which reduces their buoyancy. So when they go out to eat, they can just sink down to the bottom more easily and eat their food. So if you're a diver, you have the weight belt, right? That's essentially their weight belt to help them sink down to the bottom. They do use their tail for swimming. They are going to be using the land and the rocks to lay on the rocks in order to heat up their bodies. Males will also fight for territories on rocks where like the females will be hanging out on a rock and the males will fight for dominance on that rock, and then if they get dominance, then they can mate with all the females in that area. Okay, so yep, all of the females in that area. So let's watch a short little video on the marine iguana, because the marine iguana is really cool. What? So the marine iguanas, when they're eating that algae, they're swallowing seawater. And that seawater has lots of salt in it, and they need to get rid of that salt. And so they actually have glands in their nose that concentrate the salt and put it like into their snot, basically. And you'll see them like they shoot the snot out of their nose. It's very watery and very full of salts. And so if you just watch them, you'll see them. They like periodically shoot stuff out of their nose. Yeah, it's like very, very salty. So, and that's how they get rid of those excess salts out of their body. And it's weird. So that's the marine iguana. And they live on different islands of the Galapagos. Some of them are going to be much more bare rock, and then some of them are much lusher islands. So when I was there, we saw them like nesting on sandy beaches and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. They're pretty awesome. So here's what they look like, another picture of them. So that's the marine iguana.